Morning Year 3, welcome to your Thursday English lesson. Now we are continuing with our letter. So far we have started off our letter, acknowledged the fact that we have done lots of things wrong. We've talked about positive actions, bringing in those table pen monitors and all those things. We are now going to be thinking about how we can fix the situation a little bit more. Now in the letter that we received, the pens also talked about the way that we have been treating the scented pens in our pencil cases. So we are going to talk about that now and acknowledge the fact that we can fix this because we've treated the scented pens so badly. So we're going to focus on 3 learning chunks like we always do, with 2 initiates for each. So they're quite short sentences today, but you can really spend the time focusing on all the different words we're using, all the different lenses we're focusing on to make it as exciting as possible for the reader. Okay, so we'll just focus on this first initiate today. Now, this is the final thing that we are really talking about in our letter today. It's the last thing, but I don't want us. I want us to acknowledge the fact that it's our last thing. So when you're getting towards the end of a letter, the pens might be starting to get, okay, yeah, you've said a lot, you've said a lot. Oh, okay, this is the final paragraph. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention because it's near the end if you get told. So we are going to have a look at some adverbs that we could use to make it obvious that this is the last point. So when we think back to our work at the beginning of last week, we use words like firstly and primary and first of all. So we now need to think of some words that show that this is the final point. So jot those down in your first box for me, please. Okay, so I did give you a few clues there. We've got words like finally, ultimately, or lastly. So we can start off our little paragraph today with one of those time adverbs. Now, the second thing that we are going to have a look at is how we can show remorse. How can we show that we are sorry for sniffing the pens? Now, we're going to see if we can use some of these words as a way of taking responsibility for the fact that actually, I'm sorry, I know what I have done is wrong. So I've got 4 words here for you that you can use to really take ownership of the mistakes that you have made. So in your second box, write down those 4 words. How can you finish off the sentence using those words to show that you are sorry? I'll give you an example. So I realise that I have made a mistake. So can you think of something for all 4 of those phrases, please? Okay, so I realise that I've made a mistake. Upon reflection, I see that my actions are wrong. I understand how this must have felt. It must have been terrible to be sniffed. And I recognise that it was bad. So you're taking the responsibility of saying, look, I know all of these things. I feel terrible. I'm so sorry. Please come back. You're trying to persuade them. And taking responsibility is a way that you can show you understand what you have done was a mistake. So for our learning chunk today, our actual sentences that we are going to write, we're going to start with this time adverb here, saying this is our last point, and then showing remorse. So finally, I realise that I show complete disregard for the scented pens, which we are most lucky to have. So starting my time adverb, I used that realise and then followed it by a way of showing that I understand that what I've done is wrong, taking responsibility. Now, this last part on the end here, which we are most lucky to have, is additional information in that sentence. If I took that out, the sentence would still make sense without it. So I've added it in. I've added in a clause, a subordinate clause that has added more detail to my sentence. Now, this part here doesn't make sense by itself, but if I pop it on the end of a sentence, it deepens the sentence, shows me a little bit more information. I know a little bit more about how you feel about those scented pens now. I've also phrased it in quite a positive way that will make those scented felt tip pens feel really good about themselves. Oh, they're lucky to have me, or maybe I will come back to work for year 3. So for your first learning chunk sentence today, begin with this adverb to show that it's your final point, and then use your comma. And then explain how you realise the consequences of your actions, and that you have realised that they are the wrong thing to do. So you could use the word realise, or you could use any of the other phrases that you have got jotted down in your second box. So first learning chunk for me, about 5 or 10 minutes. Tell me that you understand everything you've done was wrong. Okay, so let's have a look at our second learning chunk. Now, we're first of all going to focus on these smell words here. Now, in this learning chunk, we're going to talk about why we sniff the pens. Basically, it was too irresistible. The smells were too good. They danced up my nose and I wanted to smell them. So we're going to start off with our positive smell words. So everything you can think that describes things positively for smell. Can you jot those down in your third box, please? Okay, so I've got things like delicious, tasty and delightful. Positive smell words of why I definitely wanted to sniff those pens. Now, the second thing we're going to have a look at for this learning chunk is creating a metaphor. Now, a metaphor is when we describe something in a way that can't actually happen. Now, we're going to focus on how the smell moved to you. So I want you to think about lots of different words that you can use for moved that a smell can't actually do. A smell does like drift towards you, but I don't think a smell can dance towards you. So think about what action words we can use and then make it into a little phrase for me, like, you know, the smell danced towards my nose, something like that. So jot down your metaphors in your fourth box for me, please. Okay, so I already gave you one of my examples, but danced up my nose, sprinted towards me or skipped through me. Smells can't actually move like that, so you've created a metaphor. Now, for our second learning chunk sentence, what we're going to do is we're going to say, you know, these smells were so delicious, they danced up my nose, I couldn't resist smelling them, and then also describing what they smelled like. So, their fragrance was too delicious. The smell danced up my nose, forcing a smile across my face. The red pen smelt like a bowl of juicy strawberries, and the brown smelt like apple pie with toffee sauce. Now, I can almost smell those things while I'm saying them there. Described it in a way that makes it really clear in my brain, and I wish that I could smell those things right now. So in your sentence today, explain why the things were tempting using a positive adjective like delicious, and then talk about how they moved towards you, and then also what they smelt like. Make sure everything is really positive for me. You want to acknowledge the fact that, oh my goodness, these things are so amazing, like the smelly pens, you are incredible. And then we'll talk about in a sec that actually that was the wrong thing to do. So why they were the tempting words, how they moved towards you, and then what they smelt like as well, please. 5 or 10 minutes, your second learning chunk today, off you go. Okay, so let's have a look at our third and final learning chunk for today. Now, we're going to start by focusing on some feeling sentences. Now, we've just talked about the fact that these pens were so irresistible and this is what they smelt like. But we're going to acknowledge the fact that actually that was the wrong thing to do. And I now feel like this. You're going to feel negative because you want to show that you've felt remorse for sniffing these pens and it was the wrong thing to do. So think about some negative words that you can describe how you felt now for sniffing the pens. And I'm looking for things along the lines of like inappropriate. So not like I felt bad or I feel terrible, but like I know it was inappropriate. I know it was the wrong thing to do. So in your fifth box, can you jot down some negative feeling words for how you now feel after sniffing the pens? Okay, so on top of inappropriate, I've also got like distressing, irresponsible, and thoughtless. So we can use those to describe, you know, actually, I know that what I did was irresponsible. I know that it was thoughtless. Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to start our sentence with a conjunction. So if we think back to our previous sentence, we've just talked about the fact that, you know, this was delicious. The smell danced up my nose. You smelled like toffee sauce. But I know that what I've done was inappropriate. But we're not just going to start with the word but. I want us to think of lots of other words that also mean but, because we're year 3 now. We do use and, but, and so, but let's think about something a little bit more creative. So in your 6th box, can you jot down some other words for the conjunction of but, please? Okay, so things like however, yet, or all the same. So let me show you the model of what we're going to do using these 2 initiates today. However, I understand all the mindless sniffing was offensive, perhaps even thoughtless, and must stop. So I've started with my conjunction, my other words for but, and then I've said that I understand that what I have done is this negative feeling. It's caused those negative feelings in me. And then I've also added on the end, it must stop. I know that what I've done is completely wrong. Now, adding little bits like this, and it must stop, really emphasises to my to the felt tip pens that I'm writing to that I know that all the things that I've done are wrong. They must stop. I'm taking responsibility for them. It helps to persuade the felt tip pens to come back so that we can use them. So for your last sentence today, start with your conjunction and then acknowledge the negative effects that you've had from sniffing those pens for me, please. So pause the video, 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, so we have completed our penultimate learning chunks for today. So we've talked about all those things that we're going to do to fix the situation with the scented pens. Now we've got our last learning chunks to focus on tomorrow, our last shape of the text for our letter, with a final little bit of a push to persuade those felt tip pens to come back. I've really loved reading everything that you've been doing for these letters this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of the things that you've come up with today. Have a lovely day, Year 3, and I will see you tomorrow.